How's it going, everyone? This is Samir and welcome to another video from PSR. Today I am talking about one of my Honda Civics, but not the FL5 Type R. I'm talking about my EJ6 Sedan, aka my 1996 Honda Civic LX. And it's been actually quite a handful of years. It's been almost 4 years actually since the last video this car was featured in. At that time, it was a walk-around video. It was sort of my 10-year anniversary with the car. At this point, we're approaching the 14-year anniversary, which is pretty insane to think about. Not a lot has changed during that time, but certainly enough time has passed by, as well as enough things have occurred to the car, you know, changes and modification-wise, to justify this video. And beyond that, we're also going to be doing plenty of work, and the car is going to be undergoing some significant changes over the coming weeks and months. All of Team PSR is going to get together and do some seriously cool things to it, which we'll talk about maybe a little bit more by the end of the video, or maybe in the next video. I don't know yet how I'm going to organize that, but this video, for those purposes, is going to essentially serve as a really nice sort of prologue to all of that. Sort of a, hey, here's where the car sits right before we do all this incredible work, and then let's see, you know, where it goes from there. And if nothing else, it'll serve as a refresher for those of you who've seen it before, and for those who haven't, well, there you go. You get to see my other car, my first car that I've owned since I was 15 years old. And yeah, why don't we just go ahead and dive into it then. So I'm going to start off by doing what I typically do in these videos, and that's doing a literal walk around of the video, just showing you how it looks from, you know, every side, before diving into sort of, you know, I don't know exactly how in depth I'll go in this video, but talking about, you know, a little bit of what the car is about, what it is, I guess is the better way of phrasing that, what I've done to it, what I'm going to keep working on to improve it beyond this point, and, you know, all of that. Maybe even point out some of its flaws, of which there are plenty, but, you know, still, you know, great car at the end of the day, no question. So here we are. Let's start off back here in this corner. What I like to do is start off with the interior, and that's simply because I've done the least of the interior. In fact, these days I've noticed, given the car is now, you know, 28 years old, I've noticed it's actually got a very, very clean interior for its age. And so, yeah, why not start off in there? Let's start with the back, where there's less interesting stuff to actually cover. In here, you know, it's nothing is done to the back. You know, you got standard door cards and everything else. The only thing I could even begin to point out is that I have aftermarket Pioneer speakers. Not that they're visible, but they're in there. Although I installed those maybe close to 10 years ago now, so the quality is not the best it's ever been, but there you have it. Otherwise, let's just step in here. In terms of leg room, not the best, absolutely not, but it's actually, you know, fairly usable. And obviously, you know, the driver can sacrifice a bit of leg room to make their rear passengers more comfortable if they're into that sort of thing. But no, it's really clean in here. You know, all the trim and everything. You know, like, you can see there's no bubbling or creasing or anything like that. The seats are in really good shape. Those who have been paying attention, you'll know that about a year ago, I went ahead and stripped the interior of the car, or at least I should say fully stripped. I partially stripped it. I basically stripped the rear floor mats back, so the entirety of the back seats, allowing the trunk area to sort of connect into the car, and that's actually a good place to look at next. So I just put the interior back in because, first of all, this car is going to take on a bit more of a daily driver role this upcoming winter, and so having a place to put like my briefcase and jacket and stuff, you know, especially when I have a passenger, it just makes sense. Plus, having the ability to lug around 5 people, or really more like 4 or 3.5, given the interior space, it just makes sense to have it in there. Although I did go ahead and leave the trunk stripped out because, frankly, the board that was down here, it was actually moldy. Don't know exactly how that happened. I think I spilled something in there, you know, 10 plus years ago, maybe some Coca-Cola or something, but so that was moldy and just sort of weak and everything. The spare tire that was in here was, you know, the original one, 28 years old. It's not like it could really be used as a spare tire anymore. And then I was like, okay, well, if I'm going to leave that stuff out, might as well leave everything else out. The only other thing that's done back here is I have a rear meganracing strut bar. You can see Megan Racing. It's a little dark in here, but you can see this is their newer logo. I have a Megan Racing strut bar up front, and it has the older logo. Maybe I shouldn't point that out because it's a technical imperfection, but we can live with it. Otherwise, oh, actually you can see, you know, maybe a bit of the Pioneer speakers back here since everything's exposed. And I've also got an LED light here in the trunk. Given its age, though, it doesn't really shine that brightly, and frankly, I don't carry anything in here anyway. So let's move on. Now, onto the very important part of the interior, the actual front driver's seat, as opposed to the rear driver's seat. Here, first of all, you can see this car's got 153,000 miles, so quite light considering its age, quite light. I've got these reverse glow gauge faces, which I got them off eBay. This was essentially, I think, the first modification I did to this car was getting these gauges. I was just really into them at the time, and even now I still kind of like them, although I have flirted with the idea of replacing them, or not replacing them, removing them. We've got this dual stereo, this DUAL. See, like, let's see if we can focus in on that at all. Oh, it's just such a small logo. Yeah, right there, right here. Dual stereo. As you can see, you know, these buttons used to be clear. Now they're all yellowed from the sun. I don't even know if the CD player portion works. I haven't played CDs in this car for quite some time. Not that it really matters. This thing, you know, this thing was a few years old when I put it in here, maybe 8 or 9 years ago. So that gives you a sense of its age. I actually have wired from the back an auxiliary cord. I have it looped down through the sort of center console area. And of course I have to have an adapter these days because you can't just have an aux port in a phone anymore. That'd be unacceptable. But anyway, that's it for the interior. I mean, everything else is pretty much standard. But as I was saying, yeah, I mean, it's a really, you know, good, clean looking interior. The steering wheel looks good, you know, pretty much everything. You know, the floor mats have definitely seen better days. And I guess we could use a bit of a vacuuming too, but yeah, it's not my daily driver. I don't pay too much attention to that anymore. Now we're gonna take a look under the hood and discuss, you know, engine and exhaust modifications. And here she is, the D series in all its glory. D16Y7 with obviously a few things done under here. One thing I really like about this engine bay is just because so many things look different from OEM, it looks like a lot has been done to it when in reality not a lot has been. Let's start with the smaller things. First of all, very recently I went through and refreshed the engine bay. So I went through and, you know, sort of sanded down any rust that was here. You know, there was some rust here, this piece here, this sort of AC condenser bracket, that wasn't looking very good. I went ahead and shined up the radiator hoses and all the other black hosing with some, what do you call that stuff? It's a Meguiar's product. Oh, I'm losing my mind. I can't remember what it's called, but it's a plastic trim restorer. I used that on there, and that, you know, really did wonders. And then, yeah, so, you know, I just touched it all up. I went through and sort of detailed it nicely in that way. And then, of course, we've got the bigger parts. So why don't we go ahead and start sort of from the intake to the exhaust, the order in which things operate, sort of the order of operations for a vehicle. Here, starting off, we got the whale penis. We got the Password JDM carbon fiber power chamber intake. Beautiful thing. Really, I mean, it does up the engine bay phenomenally. I mean, it's just, you have this giant, you know, like multi-plastic boxed, really cheap, thin looking intake that comes with the car. Obviously that does wonders for fuel economy, but this really does a lot of things for the noise, for the quote unquote power. There's not a lot of power to extract, you know, as is, you know, from a stock motor, but what you can get, you will with this thing. Then here, just since it's in the way, we got my other Megan Racing strut bar with the older logo, looking very fresh and clean in there. Adds a nice bit of shine to the engine bay. Then back here, we've got a D16Y8 throttle body and intake manifold, which is one of the things that's different from the, you know, Y8 motor compared to the Y7 motor. The Y7 motor actually has the throttle body facing upward, kind of back here, with the intake manifold kind of being shorter overall. And that makes it sort of awkward because then for air intake, you have to have one that kind of loops up and down, whereas this allows a much more, you know, direct sort of path to the manifold and then to the engine therefrom. Then of course, you know, we've got the valve cover. It's a stock valve cover. It's just painted red. I did that recently myself. You know, it's not the most phenomenal job anyone can do, but it actually looks pretty damn good in here, if I do say so myself. And then we get down here to the exhaust. We got dcsports 421 stainless steel headers. It's a 2-piece header. You can see that I've got the top portion of it ceramic coated in black. That itself has seen better days, but it does help, reduce overall temperature in the engine bay and, help extract as much power as possible from that Y7. Of course, the Y7 motor normally has its catalytic converter right here as opposed to underneath the block, whereas, in the EX it is that, very traditional setup with the catalytic converter underneath. So you have to sort of, you have to extend one of the O2 wires, and you have to kind of modify things a little bit, but it's definitely worth it. Now here we are, back to the outside. Just a couple of basic things. First of all, this is the OEM color, but it is a respray. Cyclone Blue Metallic is what you call it, and it's just a phenomenal color. Like I said, I've lived with this color, the last 14 years. I've really grown to love it over that time, and I just can't really bring myself to replace it, although I have thought about it. Along with that respray are a number of other changes that were made to the body. So on an LX, one thing you'll normally find is that you have black plastic mirrors, door handles, side skirts, door molding trim, all of that. I've paint matched all of that. And then one other thing that would normally be black is the sort of trunk tray here in the rear, this piece here. That has all been paint matched to go for that sort of EX look, that very nice uniform look, and really modernize the car, I think, quite a bit. And one thing I wish is that I would have gotten PPF back when I had this car painted, because as you can see, there's a fair number of chips on the bumper, on the lip, on the hood, but that's something that's going to happen in the future. For right now, I'm not going to worry about it too much. But otherwise, let's just sort of work our way front to back. I'll talk about what's been done as well as what's now missing. First and foremost, you can see I don't have a Top One Motors banner anymore. That company went bust, which was very unfortunate because at the time I was expecting some new winglets for the front. But of course, at this point, I'm sort of indifferent because I have the parts from them that I want, and I've removed the other parts that I'm not interested in. So, carrying on with that, I no longer have front winglets. I decided to go for a more OEM plus look for the front end, and I think it's paid off. So those are no longer on the car. But otherwise here, front end, we've got effectively an OEM style front end with a Civic Type R style grille. We got a Civic Type R style front lip as well, which is, notice how I'm saying style. That implies they are not OEM, meaning they're significantly cheaper, but also significantly worse build quality. But again, this is one of those things that'll change eventually. For now, they more than serve their function, and it makes the whole front end of the car look pretty cool. Especially when you consider the fact that I have these are Acura EL mirrors from a 1998 Acura EL, which is a Canadian spec, effectively EK sedan, just branded as an Acura. Really pretty cool car, and they look exactly like the EK9 Civic Type R mirrors, and as you can see, they fold just like those mirrors would. Unfortunately, they don't have any power folding. They don't have power folding as an option. They do have heating as an option, although I haven't bothered to wire that up because I just couldn't be bothered, frankly. So, moving on, we've got window tint. This Windows tint has seen better days, but that's one of those many changes that'll occur eventually. Not too bothered by it at this point, especially since it's not my daily driver. But it's effectively, I think, 35% of the front, so not terribly dark, and then I think it's 25% or so in the rear windows and the back windshield. I gotta run tint. That's just what I do. I love my tint. And then outside of that, we got these rear window vents. These are a Top One Motors product, and they have about 3 or 4 truly functional purposes, but for me, it's really just the look. I think it looks really cool. And those can be, you know, they can pop in and out really quick. You know, when I go for drives like these, I just throw them in, and they really give the car a very nice racy feel. I like that. Then here at the very back, we got a Mugen style rear wing, you know, $100 off eBay, and it just looks awesome. You got these cool little, you know, plastic wing stands. You know, I can't tell you exactly how much it does for me aerodynamically speaking, but it at least looks very good. I think it looks especially good on the sedans. It just, I don't know, something about it. Something about the way the rear window and trunk curve with the, you know, the way that looks next to the wing, it just works. While we're here at the rear end, we got a couple of other things to address. We got a rear genuine JDM Civic Type R badge, which, you know, looks just so good. It's pretty much a mandatory upgrade for any US-based Civic, or any, I should say, non-Type R Civic. Then we got the taillights here, which are sort of like an SI style taillight. Normally this corner right here would be amber, but these ones, you know, from eBay, I think they're sort of based on the, I can't remember which one it is. Is it the Ferio? I can't tell you for certain, but effectively gives you that nice clear look. Then back here we've got my second and final Top One Motors. You can see right there, Top One Motors part, which is their half diffuser, which, unlike their full diffuser, which I had previously, is significantly lighter and probably provides the same, if not well, my camera cut out suddenly there, which is unfortunate, but let me finish the sentence. The Top One Motors half diffuser, it provides the same, if not the same, almost the same levels of downforce, while being significantly less heavy, and maybe, you know, less overall aggressive and in your face. This one's a little more understated, which really sort of goes in line with the whole look of the car. I mean, with white wheels, you know, it's kind of hard to be totally understated, but it all looks, you know, really quite OEM Plus-esque and fresh and clean and just sort of tasteful, which is, I mean, I wouldn't say that's a hard thing to achieve necessarily, but it was sort of hard for me to achieve it back in the day when I started with this car. I mean, you know, running the body kit amongst other things, Euro tail lights. Needless to say, I've come a long way with the car. There are a few other things to go over. All right, coming now to the wheels and suspension. In terms of wheels, we've got 16x7 plus 40 Rota grids in white with blue, although they're now faded blue, Password JDM lug nuts. They're just aluminum lug nuts. I've got painted brake calipers, painted blue, something like 10 years ago. They've seen better days. Those need repainting. And then the rear drum brakes, those are also going to get painted, but they're going to get painted like a black. I don't want them standing out at all. I want red drum brakes. But yeah, as you can see, they aren't looking their best. They're looking, you know, rusty and old and gross. As you can see back there, we got coilovers in this thing. We got another thing from Megan Racing Easy Street coilovers, which have done wonders for me. I've had them on the car for maybe 7.5 years or so, and they've done a good job for me that whole time. And then in terms of camber adjustment, I've got Skunk 2 Racing front and rear camber kits, which of course you can't really see all that well. In fact, you know, without me getting under the car, you know, kind of like up in this well, you're just not going to see it at all. Tires, I guess, there's nothing special about these tires. In fact, they're on their last leg sort of at this point, but they're Falken Zeeks, and the size is 195/50 R16. To run this width, at this height, I found that I needed to sort of bend back the lip of the rear quarters and the front fenders. Just pretty much a necessity if you want to be able to, you know, run it this way without rubbing. I mean, if you're into the rubbing, you know, good for you, I guess, but I hated it. It sounds horrible, especially in the car. It sounds way worse than anything that's actually going on outside the car, but yeah, it's just something to avoid. But there you have it, guys. It might not seem like there's been a whole lot done to this car over the last, especially when you consider the fact I've had it for 14 years. Like, that's it. Well, first of all, I've only been modding it for maybe 10 of those years, 10 or 11 of those years. But one thing to note is that there have been a number of things done to this car which either replaced previous modifications or reversed previous modifications. For example, I mentioned earlier the body kit. No more body kit. Not that Duraflex body kit I had, at least. I've got that, you know, front lip there. I've got this Mugen style wing. I've got a few other aero parts, but try to keep it all very nice and tasteful. I've come far from outgrowing my Fast and Furious phase. Not that I don't still watch those movies, because they're a guilty pleasure for sure. But at this point, I want to keep the car looking clean, tasteful, and I also want to keep it reliable. But at this point, because it's no longer my daily driver, I don't have to compromise as much as I've had to in the past. And also because I now have a house with a garage, I can actually perform projects and work on projects with this car that are, you know, more complicated and would take longer. Whereas before, I'd be in a parking lot, I'd typically have to get whatever the work was that day. I have to get it done that day so I can use the car to get to work the next day, right? No longer a problem. But yeah, guys, given how long this video is already, and just how much left I have to say with respect to the future of this car, I'm going to reserve that discussion of that topic for the next video. And what do you know? My camera cut out again. Although this time it was due to heating up. Maybe that's what happened last time as well. I don't know. It didn't give me any sort of notice. Or if it did, I didn't hear it over the wind. Either way, I effectively said what I wanted to in that last clip. Just to avoid a sudden end to the video, I just wanted to sort of rephrase. Yeah, this video I'm sure is quite long, and I don't want it to be too overly long, especially since, you know, we're gonna have plenty of time to discuss the EJ6 as well as our plans for it in the coming videos, which will continue to feature this car. Of course, you know, the other cars are gonna be getting their own love, you know, to the extent we can, but yeah, right now this car is the focus just because we got some good stuff coming for it. So in the next video, we'll get into that more, but until then, I'm gonna leave it right here. This has been Samir. Thank you all for watching. Sorry, I've got a little giant fly buzzing around me.
We got 3 flies, 5 flies.
I'm sure you heard it. Who knows? We've got a seemingly transient person up here. If I die, it's them. So just keep that in mind if you find this. Dude, I've never seen this arrow here before, telling you where to put this thing. I mean, where else could you put it? It's like a foot long. You lift it up. It's like, oh, where could it go? Maybe up here in this guy? I don't know.